an ambassador is the animals that are in our care that we work with. People come into the park and they're able to connect with the animals in a way that makes them care about animals in the wild. So I'm like you. I love to see animals in the wild. I'm fascinated when I see anything out in the wild. But there's a difference to me between the animals in the wild and the animals that I've made a connection and a strong relationship to at the park. So when people come in and they have that relationship with those animals, I feel it does make them care for the animals out in the wild. So our animals serve as ambassadors for all the animals out in the ocean.
Do you have any data about that impact, about those what that ambassadorship achieves?
Oh, absolutely, we have data. We have about 18 to 20 articles have been published in peer-reviewed journals since 1988, reinforcing the idea that zoos and aquariums do provide a positive experience, and that when guests leave the zoo or aquarium, that experience carries on. And we have a list of references if you need them for study later.
I am curious, though, today's world is a little different than it was 50 years ago when SeaWorld was founded. Now we can get on the internet and we can watch a documentary about a killer whale, or we can read up, or even see live cams sometimes. How does that change the nature of this?
Well, I think it definitely makes it more accessible. There's a lot more information that's available for people out there. But again, there's a difference between watching something on TV, seeing a documentary, and the difference between coming into the park and making those connections and seeing what the animals are really all about.
So,
I am curious, Susan, given that you studied SeaWorld's business model, how much do you think that education about the animals was really central to what they were doing?
I found that was ambiguous in the study that I did. Certainly, SeaWorld's lease with the city of San Diego demands that there be some educational function for the use of the city land that it's on. And actually, this is a pretty unusual thing in theme park history. There really aren't very many that are on municipal land and that lease it. Most theme parks are on privately owned property, and so they're not open to as much scrutiny or open to as much negotiation as to what would go on in them. But so there is this mandate that education be provided. I felt that although there really are tens of thousands of kids going through there on field trips every year, and there are other kinds of programs that are offered. The result of my study was that it was very closely tied to the marketing of the park itself. And so if I were to do this study again, I think I would try to find some science education experts who are independent to assess the educational impact.
what is the difference between education and marketing, though? I mean, if it's good education, it is fun, and that would have a marketing benefit, right?
I think good education is very open-ended and doesn't necessarily lead either to a purchase or a product. I mean, good education...
Oh, so that's what you mean, when it connects actually to a sale of some kind.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that was very clear that was happening in the 80s and 90s with education programs was that it was a way of exposing kids and their families to SeaWorld very early through the school system.
Well, Naomi, obviously, as you're kind of a star among the opponents of SeaWorld's decision to hold killer whales. Is there anything that this institution, this company could do, or what could it do for you guys to hold hands at a joint press conference and everything would be rosy from then on?
Well, I was just involved in a conversation that was actually based on that question. What common ground do we have, and how can we move forward into the 21st century and achieve what we're all interested in, which is protecting the ocean environment and the animals in it. And frankly, from my perspective, one of the first things SeaWorld could do would be to start telling the truth about these animals when they're in captivity. Leading back to what Susan just said, the fact is that accurate information on the impact of captivity on certain species at the park, primarily killer whales, would not serve their corporate narrative. And as a killer whale biologist, that is more even sometimes than the welfare of these animals, which is severely impacted by being in confinement. It's the inaccurate information that is provided to these, to the public in the form of education, in the guise of education, that it bothers me as a biologist, bothers me as a scientist, and it's starting to bother a lot of other scientists and biologists.